And I would introduce Professor Amit Kapoor, who is President and CEO of the Institute for Competitiveness India, which is part of the global network for the Institute for Strategy and Competitiveness at Harvard Business School. The Institute for Competitiveness is also responsible for the Porter Prize, which recognizes Indian companies competing on the basis of Professor Michael Porter's idea of value creation, innovation, and strategy. Amit heads up the Rendenhai Center in India. Amit, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for the kind words, Des. It is absolutely a pleasure to be here. Quite interestingly, if you really look at the Institute for Competitiveness, Institute for Competitiveness works in the area of economic geography, and we try to understand as to how locations become more competitive and productive over a period of time. And as we are really talking about locations being productive, of course, we have to understand as to how firms actually perform and how firm productivity can actually change. And as we really look at doing this work, we look at two basic principles, that there are social objectives and economic objectives. And both these objectives have to come together to really create value in the world. So basis this, whatever work we do, we try to understand as to how firms can actually fulfill economic objectives and how firms can actually fulfill economic objectives. And looking at this, we fundamentally look at various sets of areas. So we talk about the idea of social progress, or we talk about the idea of, say, competitiveness, strategy, and so on and so forth. And this is where the Rendenhai Center really fits into the whole idea of what we are really looking at doing. Because as we believe that fundamentally the future models of business are really going to get redefined because of the internet. There is, as you're saying, the Internet of Things, there is going to be a huge leap that can actually happen. So we are really going to be talking about a world which is more like smart connected products. We are actually talking about capabilities which are going to be uniquely different, and that is going to create opportunities and challenges for enterprises. So if you really look at it, what I'm really looking at is going beyond the technology stack. It is in terms of saying as to how that system of systems is really going to get created. And this is where we are looking at creating possibilities within the center. And as I say, we are looking at 3 or 4 things as we talk about into the center or doing within the center. One is very clearly, of course, creating a network of organizations who would like to understand what things should be, or how Hire has actually created a very interesting ecosystem and how they can actually learn from those sets of practices. But broadly, if you really look at it, there are 4 things which I feel are going to be the cornerstone of the center, which we have just started in the last month or so. And now we are really strategizing as to how we really move forward. So one of the things is going to be research and publications. And fundamentally, as we say, like when I say research and publications, we fundamentally do a lot of work on, say, understanding the innovation ecosystem in India, the competitiveness structures in India, how states compete, how companies are competing. And this is where we say, like, we need to understand the idea of IoT readiness. We need to understand as to how states are creating ecosystems to really push forward for creating ecosystems. Like I was saying, can we create ecosystems across the world? So if you have a Silicon Valley, you have something in China, can we actually have an advent of another Silicon Valley in India, and how that can actually happen? Can we create an ecosystem of enterprises that can really push forward into the direction? So research publications around that area, understanding the readiness of companies, readiness of states, or the constituent parts of the country, and how we can actually compete across the board. The following that basis the research and publication call as interaction events, something like what we are doing here. It's about sharing ideas. It's about talking to people. And that is where we are talking about the idea of webinars and so on and so forth. Create those interactions and to really push the envelope forward. I think the fundamental view is that as we share the information, that is when we will really understand as to how things are happening. The interactions will really make us understand what needs to be done next, because this is a world which is going to be very, very interesting. It's changing so dramatically. So one of the things which I believe, one of the areas that we work very strongly is about democracies. And internet is going to fundamentally have a huge challenge for democracy. So can we see as to how business models can actually get created, which are going to be hugely different? In fact, I'm just starting to teach a course at Stanford in January on reimagining capitalism. And so where I see is that internet can actually alter the way we really look at the capitalistic systems, how capitalistic societies will function, and so on and so forth. So that is what we are also looking at. And that is where this whole thing fits in. And the third thing, as we are really looking at, is in terms of creating programs. And when you say programs, that is about training programs for corporations, visits, and so on and so forth. But last but not the least, and that is the most important part, and the most important part being as to the advisory that we can actually provide for the corporations in terms of understanding what needs to be done for the future. Because I think there are two ways in which you have to really look at it. Like, one is that we are sitting on a static place. But I think with the Internet of Things, it's not static. It is going to be so fundamentally different. As you said, Des, in the beginning, AI is actually going to be something that we need to tackle. But what is that tackling going to be? How that thing is going to alter? There could be very different paths that can actually be taken across. But I think the path which is going to be important is going to be, how do we really create a capitalistic system which is not exploitative, which is very fundamentally more equitable and growth, and can these models really take it? In fact, as I see as the Render AI model, why I'm supremely impressed with that model is that you're actually trying to create entrepreneurs across the board. You're creating that network of people who are able to perform and who are able to do things better, and that is which does away with a lot of inequality across the system. So can we create those set of ideas and really push the world forward? And that is what we are really looking at within the center itself. Early days, but super excited with what we are able to do. We have done a couple of pieces. We are looking at creating a report on the IoT ecosystem in India, how platforms are functioning and things. But I think within the next 1 year, we would have a lot more things to share as we move along. But this is what I had to say, Des. Thanks a lot for the opportunity, and super excited to really work in this area and work with all the partners on board. Thank you.